When the $5 billion bailout was approved in May, President Mauricio Macri was confident he'd never have to use the money. But now, he wants access to the funds as soon as possible.
I want to announce that we have agreed with the IMF to advance all the necessary funds to guarantee compliance with next year's financial program. As for us, we will accompany the support with the necessary fiscal efforts.
Analysts say the bailout was a last resort that didn't impress investors.
Macri's message wasn't strong enough. The markets were waiting for a much bigger signal, and simply advancing the IMF funds doesn't change the situation.
The first $15 billion of the bailout has already been disbursed, but investors doubt that Argentina will be able to finance a total of $25 billion in peso and dollar-denominated debt due next year, even with more funds from the IMF. Argentinians have held nationwide protests against austerity measures, and numerous government interventions have so far failed to reverse high inflation, stalled growth, and a plunging peso. The currency has weakened more than 40% against the dollar this year. It's caused inflation to soar to an annualized rate of 31% last month. To shore up the falling peso, the Argentinian central bank hiked interest rates by 15 percentage points on Thursday. They're now the highest in the world at 60%. The central banks also sold almost $13 billion in foreign reserves since January. That includes $500 million in currency auctions over the span of 2 days this week. The economic crisis is reminiscent of one almost 2 decades ago, which led to a default in 2002.
If we had to go to the IMF, it was because there wasn't any trust. This is a financial bet, and we already went through this, and those who lost were the poor.
While Macri's political future hangs in the balance, some Argentinians say the economy never truly recovered, and they fear history will repeat itself. Laila Humairah, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, let's bring in Remi Piet from Miami. He's Senior Director at management consulting firm America's Market Intelligence. Welcome back to the program. I'd like to start with Macri's appeal to the IMF first. So when he agreed to the terms of this loan back in May, this $50 billion bailout, he said he didn't expect to use it because he thought that the economy would recover. Clearly, that hasn't happened. So I'm wondering, is this his last resort? Will it fix Argentina's economy?
Well, the objective last May was to reassure investors and try to maintain at a stable level the national currency, the peso. And the objective was to show that the IMF has Argentina's back, and if there's a need of loan, then the IMF will step in to make sure that Argentina doesn't default on its bonds over the next few months. The objective was to have this message be enough so that investors do not actually leave the country and that the currency is stabilized. That has not happened. As always, in those situations of crisis that are linked to currency and investment, it's a question of confidence. And right now, investors do not have a confidence that Macri will be able to implement the series of reform that is needed in the country, and that the currency or the growth of the country will be enough and stable enough or in growth enough to be attracting new fiscal revenues and balance the budget.
Yes, and let's look at some of Macri's reforms, because he was elected in 2015 to fix the economy, and at the time he did move quite quickly, didn't he? He cut spending, he put an end to capital controls, and perhaps most importantly, he restored the currency back to a floating exchange rate. It was under currency controls for some time before that. I guess in the space of 2 years, it is understandable that those reforms haven't been able to play out and have the desired effect. Do you think we should give him more time?
Well, we did see some improvement in terms of macroeconomic policy, for sure. I mean, there are some issues that were maybe not resolved as swiftly or quickly that some of the investors would have wanted, such as, for example, reforming the pension system in Argentina, or being able to deregulate some part of the economy to create more jobs and create more economic investment in different sectors, such as, for example, raw material, mining, energy, or so on. But I mean, it is indeed a change of regime when Macri stepped in after the Kirchner/Fernandez administration that were much more on the Peronist left-wing of politics in Argentina. However, here the issue also, since it's a question of confidence, we know that Macri is going to be facing elections next year in 2019, and there's the worry from investors that the effort that Macri has done up to now will maybe not be as strong in the coming months in the hope of gathering support ahead of elections. And always in Argentina, it's often a competition of who's going to propose the most populistic measures to be elected. And that's what investors are afraid, that Macri will actually get his foot off the gas of reforms and therefore not take the necessary measures to balance the budget.
Mm. And when Macri approached the IMF back in May, we've seen thousands of people take to the streets against the IMF. Of course, I guess they're remembering the effect that an IMF intervention had on the country back in 2001. Many people blame the IMF for the economic collapse that plunged millions of Argentinians into poverty. I'm wondering, do they have cause for concern this time round? Should they be worried?
I mean, they're worried because in 2001, during the latest large crisis in Argentina, there was a missed policies from the IMF, a misjudgment of the level of the crisis in Argentina at the time. They actually thought that Argentina would be able to recover more quickly than initially forecasted, and therefore the presence of support from the IMF was probably not strong enough in providing funds and reassuring markets. So that the result of this was actually that Argentina went even further into crisis. So inside the identity, the conscience of the Argentinian people, they actually believe that the IMF stepping in actually worsened the crisis, which was the case, because instead of providing enough funds, they asked also for a series of measures, a series of reforms that severely impacting the purchasing power of the population. So they do not want to see that again. The objective here, and Lagarde is different from the IMF leadership in 2001. Lagarde is head of the IMF, is trying to provide ahead of time significant funds to be able to show that Argentina will not default. If you have a proactive policy, if you have also reforms in the country that will not be too sharp, meaning they will not kill any seeds of growth. Looking at purchasing power and being able, having the population still able to consume, to invest, and so on, then you're able to move forward ahead of the crisis. So it's always a question of finding and striking the right balance. In 2001, it was not the case. Hopefully, right now, there's going to be a better judgment of the situation in Argentina.
Okay, and we will see how the IMF reacts to that request in the coming days. Remi Piet in Miami, thank you for your analysis.